From Vatican II, the Roman Catholic Church had this to say about the perpetual calendar and the weekly cycle.
The most sacred council likewise declares that it does not oppose efforts designed to introduce a perpetual calendar into civil society. But among the various systems which are being devised for establishing a perpetual calendar and introducing it into civil life, the Church has no objection, only in the case of those systems which would retain and safeguard a 7-day week, including Sunday, without the introduction of any days outside the week. In other words, the sequence of 7-day weeks should remain unbroken. Only the weightiest of reasons, acknowledged as such by the Apostolic See, would make the contrary acceptable.
This Catholic medallion, struck in 1694 in honor of the supposed Annunciation of Mary, has on one side of it the oldest known calendar in which Monday is the first day and Sunday is the seventh day of the week. As we just saw in the documents from Vatican II, the Church has no objection to the acceptance of the perpetual calendar as long as it has a 7-day week that includes Sunday. So is it any wonder that we see the Vatican's perpetual calendar with Sunday as the seventh day of the week dating back more than 300 years? Even though it was centuries ago that the Old World Order introduced Europe to its New World Order in the weekly cycle, it appears that most of Europe did not adopt the Church's New World Order until after the time of Vatican II. And today, there are religious organizations that identify themselves as Protestants or evangelicals who at the same time play the role of the false prophet by claiming or accepting Sunday as the seventh day of the week. Without a doubt, there have been and are many working behind the scenes to establish the New World Order throughout the world and within all religions. However, there are a few faces that have emerged who early on openly promoted Sunday as the seventh day of the week. In China, it was the work of a brilliant Italian Jesuit named Matteo Ricci, who appears to be responsible for setting up Pinyin Chinese. Ricci's Pinyin was first published in the early 1600s, and it has been very successful as a tool to standardize the Chinese language, using, of course, Latin letters. It also appears that it is as a result of Pinyin and the work of other Jesuits as well, that Sunday as the seventh day has successfully found its way into Chinese life. One of the most visible 19th century proponents of Sunday as the seventh day of the week has been the Roman Catholic Frenchman pictured here, named Auguste Comte. He coined the word sociology and is called the founder of the religion of humanity and the so-called philosophy of positivism. Comte's positivist calendar contained
13 equal months, each of 28 days,
with
all its months beginning with a Monday and ending with a Sunday.
Thus, it is evident that in Comte's positivist calendar, Sunday is the seventh day of the week. Notice which country he was targeting with his calendar. It is
especially intended for the transition through which the Western Republic has to pass, the Republic which, since Charlemagne, has been formed by the free cohesion of the 5 leading populations: the French, Italian, Spanish, British, and German.
At the time that Comte wrote this, the only Western republic that could have possibly matched this description would have to have been the United States of America. This having been stated, it has been found that Comte did not intend to limit his work to the United States alone.
After he had not received anything from the Russian Tsar, Comte wrote a letter to Rashid Pasha, in which he was developing the thought concerning the possibility of the direct transition of Islam to positivism. He made an offer to the general of the Jesuits to work together for the cancellation of the church budget, because only under this condition would both the old and new beliefs be placed in their proper relationship with each other, and receive the possibility to be freely established in the hearts of the people.
We see here that Comte, who was also working with the Jesuits, sought to gain control within Islam and Russia using his so-called positivist philosophy. And although Comte may not actually be called a Jesuit, it is evident that it was his sincere desire to work in cooperation with the Jesuit order of the Roman Catholic Church. From another source, we read this concerning Auguste Comte.
In the positive philosophy, again he distinctly says that Catholicism, reconstituted as a system on new intellectual foundations, would finally preside over the spiritual reorganization of modern society. Much else could be quoted to the same effect.
Keep this in mind as we look at a quotation from the book, The Keys of This Blood, written by one of the foremost spokesmen for the Vatican in the 1980s and 1990s, Malachi Martin. His hardback edition is subtitled, The Struggle for World Domination Between Pope John Paul II, Mikhail Gorbachev, and the Capitalist West. The softcover edition states it like this: The Keys of This Blood, Pope John Paul II versus Russia and the West for control of the New World Order. Of course, at that time, Pope John Paul II represented the Roman Catholic Church. Russia represented communism or atheism, and the capitalist West represented the United States or Protestantism. Speaking of the Catholic Church's struggle for world domination, Martin says, "And some find it frightening and even appalling. Nobody expects a world order to evolve that will, as an optimist might say, combine the best of Leninism and capitalism. Neither a Leninized capitalism nor a capitalistic version of Leninism is possible. Neither does anyone know for sure the factors that hasten the end of the old game and, in a certain true sense, imposed the end game with such ease and with such rapidity, dictating the new rules, even fixing the timetable. The end game follows a new calendar." In other words, the Catholic Church plans to assert her authority for world domination once the new calendar has been implemented. And, according to Malachi Martin's book, it will be no picnic for those who do not agree with the Pope, called minimalists, once world domination has been achieved. Do you now have an idea of who is ultimately responsible for the new world order in the weekly cycle that is already being used by at least 85% of the world's population? Are we ready for what is coming with the ushering in of the new world order? These were more noble than those in Thessalonica, in that they received the word with all readiness of mind and searched the scriptures daily, whether those things were so.